This end that says do not open. I opened it.
We just lost the belt. We don't have any water pump or alternator. All right, on this week's episode, we're gonna get back to the 944. There's a handful of bugs I need to work through before it can really be a rally car. And we're gonna try to tick off a couple of those bugs this week. One of which is some shock tuning. The rears are way too soft right now. So I'm gonna pull those apart, revalve them, and then there's a couple other odds and ends that need to happen too.
This end that says do not open. I opened it. Oh, this is the... Gonna take the nitrogen out of the reservoir. I'll probably take the valve stem cap, or the core out. I don't think I have a core tool here. Then, I'm gonna take these off. That. So now there's no pressure. I'm gonna put these are soft jaws, so I'm not ruining the threads. It's plastic. There's a couple Allens here. Maybe not. Oh. Snap ring. Okay. I need to set up my play place here. That's not enough paper towels.
This is where I take a bath.
Oh no.
So that's the seal, non-seal. This is the piston. Okay. Full oil. I didn't even lose any.
Nice.
That's cool.
That's the rebound stack. This is the piston. Which I need to remember. That is up.
I got that on video, so.
Oh, good. I was gonna take a picture with my phone. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have the shock all apart, and this is kind of the stack up of what's going on. This is the piston, and the size of these orifices control, the rate of oil flow through them. And then you have these shims on either side. So the shims closest to the piston are low speed dampening. The ones kind of in the middle of the pack are kind of a mid speed dampening. And then towards the very far end of that stack is the high speed dampening. So you can kind of control where in that stack up you want to change the amount of dampening you have. The caveat to that is, whatever backer you use on the high speed, so the biggest washer you use, applies a clamp load through the entire stack. So you can change that changes the dampening throughout the entire stack, not just higher, high speed like you'd expect on that end. So I need more low speed dampening and some high speed dampening. So I'm gonna try to make some global changes here, kind of ballpark it, and hopefully put it together and get it pretty close. All right, so here's the changes I've come up with. And I don't know that they're right yet, but it's something to try. So this, I've got kind of a tiered setup here. These are the shims that were in the shock for low speed. I've stepped them up, but kept them the same thickness. I stepped them up in diameter from 37.4 to 42. Because the thing had a ton of body roll and the low speed control wasn't very good. So my theory being, if I cover more of those ports, I should have more control. Now that's gonna stiffen up the shock a little bit everywhere, which is good. The next low speed shim, I kept the same diameter, but made it a little thicker, so it'll support this disc a little better. Then for rebound, I kept the rest of them the same. For compression, I took the high speed and added a thicker, or a larger diameter shim here. So that should preload the entire stack just a little bit more. So that should give me a little more high speed, a little more medium speed, and a bunch more low speed. And there should be a bunch more low speed, and that will kind of blend together for some medium speed stuff. No way to know until we try, but next up is putting it back together, and I have to fix some hose stuff. So we're gonna get on that.
Please don't say that.
Nothing crazy.
All right, so I put the shocks back in with our first change, which was a big jump in the low speed dampening and a very minor change in the high speed dampening. So low speed, pretty good. Like that's about as stiff as I want it. Front's pretty stiff. This is similar. That's for your low speed weight transfer stuff. But if we go to like a high speed hit, or this is probably medium speed, still way too bouncy. So, we take them apart again, and change the shift stack again, and try again. All right, so of the little odds and ends we need to do to this thing, one of which is this intercom setup. So this is so the driver and co-driver can have, a headset and microphone in each helmet so you can hear each other clearly, so I'm not missing pace notes or any of that. I want it accessible because we have our volume knobs and power switches and stuff. So I need to find a home. Kind of wish I had thought of this sooner, but somewhere around there is going to have to be the accessible thing. But I'll have to make a little bracket, make it all fit, and then I want these jacks nice and accessible, but mounted somewhere, so that way you don't have to kind of grope around trying to find the cord to plug in. On top of that, I have to redo the CV boots on the rear axles. They're just original, a couple are torn, I have another spare, and I want all those ready to go in case I break an axle, and just so that these live as long as they can. Okay, all I did was make a quick aluminum bracket here, and I gave it a little twist to try to get some angle on this here, get it away from the shifter, plenty of space. I did figure out that if I run the wires through here, these race scope harnesses have a nice little Velcro thing. So then there's the other end of my cord. So that'll just stay right on the strap, easy for me to grab and plug my helmet into. So, pretty easy there. I powered it up off of the same stuff as the kind of dash setup there, the Raspberry Pi dash I made. So that all works. Not much to it. So what I'm trying to do is just reboot these, make a good 3 pairs of axles so that I have some spares, I have good ones in the car, and I can, carry on confidently. This axle that I first pulled apart has quite a bit of wear, so this isn't going to be a usable CV here. These have the little ball bearings that ride around in these grooves. You have opposing directions of groove, and that's kind of what keeps the CV within a certain range of motion. That's the same angles on the inside of this cup here. And then there's the cage, and that keeps the ball bearings from trying to run away from each other with those 2 different pressure angles under load. So any wear, like you see on this groove here, gives it a little bit of play. I noticed it when I was taking this one apart, is I had some lash. Any of that lash means I can shock load the drivetrain even harder, which means I'm gonna break it at some point. With this style of CV, I've most commonly broken the cage. So that shock load and that lash back and forth will eventually become large enough where it'll fracture the cage along the center, split it, and then 3 of the ball bearings try to run one way, 3 try to run the other way, and it's just not an overall good time. So I'm inspecting all these. This one's also worn. It's not as worn, but I'm going to try to sort through some of the spares I have and make some good sets and not have to rely on these old junk ones. Yeah, we're just going to put this back together. Got a little practice now. I'm going to put a little sauce on the inside of the boot here so I can slide it on. I didn't feel like pulling both these washers because they're a little fiddly. They're actually splined inside. So I just pulled one and put both boots on from this direction here. I get down to there. That's easy enough. To reassemble the CV. Now, this line, in this case, for this axle, goes towards the hub or the mounting flange. This is the axle shaft side. And on these inner stars, there's a witness mark from that splined washer thing. So I know this goes this way. So it has to go in like so. You do have to, see there's ramp angles in there. There's a narrow side and a wide side, depending on how you're looking at it. So it needs to go narrow to wide, and wide to narrow when you try to put them in. Otherwise, you're just gonna fight it for a while. Knock all these guys in. Go narrow to wide. Start like that. Make sure we're going the right direction. And then you can kind of see like these want to be closer together. So I can pivot that inner star to be on that narrow side of the ramp to get these closer. It is slightly fiddly, and because you're watching, it's going to be harder than it needs to be.
It's a little camera shy.
I get it. You don't want to force it. It is very tempting, but don't do it. And you don't have to do all of them at once. So if you have one that's giving you trouble, like this one, take 2 out. Just focus on the other side, which means I can drop it down a little. Or you can drop all of them and have to start again. Now hold them on the bottom, those in, then, remember I said don't force it. There we go. This washer is a Belleville, and that kind of preloads it up against a snap ring. So you can slide this on, which isn't too bad. But it's not enough to get the snap ring in, because you have to preload that disc. So you can put the snap ring in, but you're not going to be able to get it into the groove. What I found is if I take a socket and just tap it, the snap ring will drop in. So make sure the snap ring is in there and seated. This one is. So after that, there's just this awful tube of grease thing. Put some on the back of all the CV stuff. So a bunch of grease there. We put a bunch of grease in the boot. Like so. Then these get to line up the holes. And just tap this ring on. That's seated. And before I put it in, I'll put a little grease there, but there's no boot on this side. There's not one of those dust shields. So for now, I'm leaving this not messy. Now these come with these style of clamp, and I hate them. So I'm just gonna zip tie these. If it were like a daily driver or something like that, I'd put that style of clamp on, but it's not. It's something I'm gonna break and have to deal with and pull off, so no. All right, we have our rebooted axle shafts in the car. The only thing left to do is try out that valving. All right, so we're gonna go over what is hopefully one of my last changes that we can do on the street. I'm going to change, this is the compression side, this is the rebound side. I've changed these lower 3. Basically the larger disc I made slightly thinner to try to get rid of a little bit of the harshness I have at low speed stuff right now. I've made everything else a little thicker, and then I'm gonna add the shims from before into this arrangement here. So that way, middle of the pack here, mid-speed travel should be a little bit stiffer. And then Low speed should be about the same with very minimal changes to, hopefully, some of the harshness. But we won't know until we put it back together and try again.
Yeah, this may be a good spot to have you coming across.
Yeah. Hey, that's more severe than I remembered.
Yeah. But I think that'll be a good little... Yeah, I think that's going to be a good spot for us to show the suspense.
All right, so that pretty much does it for what we can test valving-wise on the street. We've made some pretty big changes from where we were at, and more importantly, I've learned a bunch about what changes make what difference. So from here, we really have to test it in a more rugged setting, like a rallycross or an actual rally. So that'll be the next step, and the next time you see this thing. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and you can follow me at Mike the Deck. Suspension feels great. We just lost the belt, so we don't have any water pump or alternator. We're about to run out of steam here, but all those adjustments made a huge difference. All right, well, spare. I planned for this. This is the small belt. I've been meaning to make a little tool mount, but I don't have any of that. So, I'd hopefully be able to just rock it on.
Maybe.
That's my hope. So I want to do fifth gear. Hold on to this. Just might need your help pushing.
All right.
Now it's on. We were off one rib.
Really?
Yeah. Next time we're gonna address the belt, because this is driving me nuts.